Title suggests many things. The important issue is the world revolves around business, society, organizations, individuals, and even religion survives and thrives because of business. Business has to encompass not just financial commodity and service transactions. It has also to include welfare, justice, empowerment, environmental, and other issues too. Every week, Business Matters will delve into aspects of business that impact our lives. We will seek out extraordinary and ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. Facilitators, educators, and entrepreneurs will be invited to inspire and enlighten our listeners. Join Anwar Moolla for an interactive show and find out what really matters in business.
نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. You've just joined us on Radio Al-Ansar on the Business Matters program. Yes, if it's Monday evening, tonight the 24th of November, just gone 15 minutes past 7, and it's another Business Matters program. Business Matters brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce. Tonight I have a very interesting guest on the line. She is an economist and the director of a company called ACACIA ECONOMICS. Her name is SHA'ISTA GOGA. So let me introduce her to you, SHA'ISTA. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Radio Al-Ansar.
Wa alaikum assalam for having me on the show.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of tonight's topic, which is the draft business licensing bill for South Africa, which I'm sure is going to be very interesting and you're going to enlighten us. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you joining us from, and a little bit about your studies and your delving into the economics world, so to speak.
Thank you. So I'm joining you from Johannesburg today. ACACIA Economics is an economics firm based in Johannesburg. I'm an economist that studied economics, and that was mostly because I was so interested in how the world and how the economy works. So I did my undergraduate at Wits, and then I went to Oxford for my postgraduate. I came back to South Africa and I got involved in looking at areas of competition, regulation, and how businesses function within the South African society.
You're being quite modest. It's not every day that people get a chance to study at Oxford, so you quite quickly or quietly slip that in. But I need to kind of just pick your brains a little bit more about the opportunity at Oxford. How did it come about, and what was your experience like being there?
Okay, thanks. So when I was an undergraduate, I was very keen on sort of expanding my economics understanding. And I felt that the best way to do that was to go to an international institution. So I applied to a whole lot of scholarships, and I was very fortunate in that I won a scholarship called the Rhodes Scholarship, which is offered to, at the time it was 5 South Africans and then 4 for particular schools. And it was a wonderful opportunity. They covered all my costs. They provided a lot of mentorship and guidance. And I was able to go to Oxford, and I spent 2 years there. And I think that was such an eye-opening experience because I was surrounded by people from all parts of the world. I had excellent teachers, excellent facilitators. But then the off-lecture learning was amazing in terms of the seminars that were available, the lectures, the debates. So yeah, strongly encourage students in South Africa to try to get these opportunities and to go forth and experience it.
Yeah, I know a little bit about the Rhodes Scholarship. It's certainly not an easy scholarship to get into. And the fact that you actually got selected for the Rhodes Scholarship is in itself a feather in your cap. And I've been to the town of Oxford as well as Cambridge. Wonderful cities to study in. I mean, such a beautiful studying environment. But particularly Oxford, spent a day there and I thoroughly enjoyed it myself. So I envy you. It must have been a fantastic experience just being in such a kind of educational environment, so to speak.
Yes, no, absolutely, it was.
Okay. SHA'ISTA, we're talking tonight about the draft business licensing bill. It's gazetted for public comment until the 28th of November, which aims to introduce a national registry of every business operating in the country. We want to highlight the reason for this and the impact on the economy and challenges this will face, including investment into South Africa. So quite a lot there to unpack. But let's just start by saying what is the primary reason behind introducing the draft business licensing bill, and a national business registry?
Okay, thank you. So at the moment, business licensing is in existence for particular types of businesses. And this is mostly food businesses, certain types of entertainment venues, and sort of live entertainment. So there's sort of three categories of businesses that are currently licensed, and each municipality has their own framework, their own structure, often their own forms. And I think overall, there's a lot of overlapping requirements across the country and often a lot of red tape to navigate. So I think, what the Department of Small Business has said is that the purpose of this act is to create a very common business framework, business licensing framework across the entire country, hopefully to create a more digitalized registry and to sort of have standards that will apply across all kinds of municipalities. So there's some legalities with sort of the national, provincial, and the municipal jurisdictions. But overall, I think it's an idea of creating uniformity in the application process, and then also to have a better understanding of what businesses are operating in the country so that resourcing and assistance can be provided where required.
Okay. Businesses will challenge and say that we've got enough red tape already. We've got all of these different regulators that we need to report to. Wouldn't an organization like the CIPC be performing a similar function? So why would one have to now re-register according to the business licensing bill?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. For businesses, there's a lot that you have on your plates, and there's some aspects of this, such as I think the business owner needs to physically go to the municipality and register. It's just adding an extra layer of red tape. I think CIPC does perform a very similar function of creating a registry. As I said, at present, there's certain types of businesses licensed, and I think something that's getting a bit lost in the mix is that the Act at the moment is at quite a high level. But what it does have is it has scope for the designation of which classes of business need to register. So I think the minister will create a list of the types of businesses that will need to register. That will be put out for public comment. So I think it might not be all types of businesses that might need to register, and they've got to give reasons why that type of business needs to register. And there are also types of businesses that might be excluded. So I think at this stage, it's unclear whether it's going to sort of be all businesses or it's going to be a subset of businesses that will be designated and required to register. But on the red tape, I think, ultimately for businesses to prosper in the country, you need as little red tape as possible. So I think, if they're talking about creating processes that are easier than the current licensing processes, so sort of digital formats, things that are going to be quicker, that are going to be more efficient, that's a good thing. If on the other hand, it creates onerous requirements for businesses, that's obviously something that's going to be problematic for the business community.
And would there be a cost attached to this type of registration?
Yes, so they will. So what the Act states is that the cost of licensing needs to be at a level that covers the cost of processing the license and shouldn't be something that is profit-making for the government. So it should relate to the amount that it costs. I guess the question is whether you're sort of creating this bureaucracy, these systems. At this stage, it's not clear how much that cost will be. And that's something that I think we'll need to understand as it unfolds.
Okay. You say the bill is gazetted for public comment till the 28th of November. That's not too many days away. What does this mean? Can one object to this at the moment, or who would be able to comment on this?
Yes, so I think, with these processes, it's so important for people to comment. So there are aspects of this bill, I think, that would be concerning. You mentioned things like the red tape, you mentioned things like the cost. So you can comment directly on it. They have an email address for submissions. It's actually blbsubmission@bsbd.gov.za. And I strongly recommend that business groupings and organizations particularly actually do submit and engage with these processes, because having been on the other side in advising governments, these comments actually play quite a role in finessing legislation before it gets to the final stages.
I would think before commenting on this bill, the businesses that would like to comment would want to see the bill and read through it and then comment. So where would they be able to read this draft bill?
It's currently available on the internet, so it's on the government website. If you just Google the name of the bill, which is the Business Licensing Bill 2025, there's a 26th September version, and that's the whole bill is out for public comment.
Okay, so that's great stuff, and we've got a few days left, so please do get your comments in. So how does this proposed national business registry differ from the current business registration systems in South Africa?
Well, at the moment, it's not entirely clear. They talk about it being digital and being uniform. So I guess the idea is that it would be something that's more accessible. I think in a lot of municipalities, particularly under-resourced ones, your business licensing application is sort of a handwritten form that's put into a drawer somewhere. So I think the idea is it's something that's more efficient that you're able to sort of access. So I think the concerns from businesses arise from various areas. The one in terms of this bill relates to small businesses. So I think certain groupings in the country have been concerned about the fact that there's going to potentially be some kind of preferential licensing for smaller businesses. And that might include, for example, shorter forms, assistance with doing forms, and sort of various things that to me look like they're meant to assist small businesses. I think in the earlier policy, there was mention made of it being preferential licensing for historically disadvantaged individuals and in areas of historic disadvantage. And I think this has raised a lot of concern with certain sectors of the business community who are worried about this being BEE sort of coming in through the back door. However, in the draft that's out now, there's a mention of redress and that being one of the principles, but it doesn't come through into the licensing framework.
Okay. SHA'ISTA, economic benefits that would stem from implementing a nationwide business registry?
Like I said, more data is often very helpful for policymakers. So overall, if you see that there's a certain area that's underrepresented, so they talk about homelands or rural areas or impoverished areas, you can sort of push money and policy into creating incentives to develop businesses in those areas. So to me, that's sort of the main area where there can be some benefit. And then just having a better understanding. Now, the one area that people have also raised concerns about is, will this provide SARS with some oversight over sort of what businesses are existing and whether they're compliant? And this is something that might occur, but I think that it depends to the extent to which they look into the systems. At this stage, it doesn't seem that SARS is sort of one of the entities that's really been consulted and part of the process. So I think, having the data, being able to decide how to do your industrial policy, how to sort of grow businesses in different parts of the country, and understanding the geospatial aspects of it is what would be helpful.
Well, speaking of SARS, last week we did a program on AI and how SARS could and would be using AI to do live tracking of our bank accounts going into the future and be able to challenge us on on transactions in and out. And I promise you, it drew a huge amount of comments from listeners and even after the program. So I must apologize to some people who got really scared about what was said last week. There is a thought that says that this is still a long way away, but something that will be implemented sometime in the future. Other comments are that it's imminent, but who knows? At the moment, there's no clarity on that. But certainly, a program last week that drew an enormous amount of comment. So on with the business licensing bill. How could this bill influence domestic and foreign investment in South Africa?
Well, I think before I get to the domestic, just on the foreign investment, one of the factors that comes in with the business licensing bill does have to do with foreign ownership. And in that, it basically states that owners of businesses that are foreign need to have the correct immigration status and papers. So that means they either need to have an asylum permit or be a refugee and have the permission to open a business. So I think with some of the sort of powers provided in this act in terms of checking for licenses, this may impact on foreign businesses that are sort of under the radar and maybe operated by people whose immigration status is not settled. So I think that's the first group of sort of foreign businessmen that might be affected by the act. In terms of the bigger picture, in terms of international foreign investors that are more formalized, I don't foresee this as being something that's going to be very problematic. Often when you sort of investing in businesses, licensing is one of those processes. And I think getting a license for a business operating in a city is something that your sort of bigger foreign investors would be quite used to. And I don't think it's something that would be problematic. On a local perspective, it depends very much on the size of entity. I think for smaller businesses, for owners that are less financially literate, less legally literate, this might pose some barriers to entry, and that might be problematic, which might impact on the types of businesses that open and the dynamism of that, particularly on the lower end. The other types of businesses that are likely to be affected are your more informal ones. So businesses such as hawkers and your sort of smaller shops that are quite informal. So I think investment on the lower end of the economy might be impacted, as I said, particularly due to some of the powers provided through this act in being able to ask for licenses, to impound goods, and to fine people. So I think that will be affected. But I think on your sort of more formalized businesses, this is unlikely to have a massive impact on investment as I see it.
Well, I was just about to say, is this not kind of some sort of a witch hunt in terms of trying to weed out the so-called spaza shops or the little informal trader that sets up base at the side of the street or on the pavement trader? Would this, you don't think this is kind of a way of weeding those people out?
It very possibly is. I think the initial wording on some of it, on one part of the act, would referred to preferential licensing for citizens and small businesses. In the sort of act that follows, they don't talk a lot more about citizens, but I do think that there's definitely a bit of an impetus for sort of having areas that, particularly in townships, I think, where there's a feeling with people that sometimes there's too many foreigners. I'm not sure if that's part of what might have driven some of this, but it definitely does provide the powers for the authorities to impact on that segment of business. I think, they're saying things with different hands, because on the one hand, they're saying that they would provide assistance and maybe make things easier for your sort of very vulnerable and your poorer businessmen. On the other hand, I think it's likely to weed out some of these people from the street. And I think organizations like the Helen Suzman Foundation, that's sort of the comments that they've brought up publicly, that this is going to impact on the most vulnerable traders.
Okay. Any feedback or concern that businesses, industry groups, and civil society have raised during this public comment period, which is almost at an end now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of been two groups of comments. The one that I've mentioned from the Helen Suzman Foundation, which has sort of made public statements on this, is related to sort of your hawkers and people who are less financially literate, and whether creating this bureaucratic red tape and this level of formality is going to impact on informal traders. I think there's a particular concern about the fact that there's powers given to impound goods and to fine people, and the fact that rent seeking might be created through this. So I think there's a concern in civil society that this type of thing and requiring licenses for informal traders may lead to people sort of needing to pay bribes to maintain their ability to run their business if they're not able to navigate the system. So that's kind of one part of the complaints from civil society. The other part is quite different, and that comes from your Free Market Foundation and groups such as that. And that's partly to do with some of the concepts around redress and small businesses, where they're concerned that there's going to be state overreach and that some of the language in the Act is going to mean that there's areas that are demarcated from small businesses, which means that it might not allow certain other businesses to operate. They're also worried about some of the concepts about redress and historically disadvantaged areas or individuals. And I think there have been some statements made in the press that this is BEE being brought in through the back door. To me, it doesn't really look like that. It looks like the focus is more on smaller businesses, but that's sort of the second group of comments and criticisms that have come up.
Okay. Well, that begs the question on how government will ensure that implementation is fair, inclusive, and does not hinder entrepreneurship or economic growth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, a lot of the detail is going to come in the regulations that come from that. But I think something that needs to be taken into account is that this is legislation that's going to be enacted at municipal level. And we have very different municipalities across the country. So whereas a city of Joburg or a city of Cape Town or eThekwini might be well equipped to deal with this, you have a lot of very small municipalities which are undercapacitated. And the question is whether government is going to provide enough support to these municipalities that this doesn't become a hindrance to business where you're sort of stuck at that stage of trying to get your license and you're in a legal gray area because the municipality hasn't been able to turn things around sufficiently.
Okay, I suppose, Shaista, time will tell what the business licensing bill has in store for us, good or bad. And we will be able to tell sometime in the future, hopefully get you back online to discuss that, when it's ready to be implemented. So what I'm going to do is spend the rest of the program being an economist. We've just kind of gone through the G20 summit, which is literally ended today. And pick your brain a bit about the economics and how the G20 would have influence or will have a future influence on the economy, positive or negative. So we're going to go for an ad break. And when I come back, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about G20 and the economy.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Radio Ansaar. Kuluntu Nazilaj, proudly brought to you by Nona's Italian Kitchen, Strata Street Food, and the Magnum Capino Treat Store. Oh Allah, guide me and grant me well-being with those whom you have granted well-being.
اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت.
Kuluntu Nazilaj, proudly brought to you by Nona's Italian Kitchen, Strata Street Food, and the Magnum Capino Treat Store. Oh Allah, guide me and grant me well-being with those whom you have granted well-being.
This December, fulfill your Umrah with Shore Mirage Travel. We have selected departure and return dates to suit you. Our packages include return flights, visas, guided support, and accommodation, so you can focus entirely on your worship from only 25,999 per person sharing. Seats are limited, so call us today on 031-208-4222 or visit www.miragetravel.co.za to secure your place. Shore Mirage Travel, your trusted partner for a blessed journey.
Business Matters.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. If you've just joined us, you on the Business Matters program. Business Matters brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce. And I've been having a really interesting conversation with SHA'ISTA GOGA. SHA'ISTA is an economist about the business licensing bill, which is up for discussion at the moment. And we have up till the 28th to comment on that. And SHA'ISTA, I can see you quite passionate about it. But let's move our attention a little bit. I believe the roads in Johannesburg have been completely gridlocked the last few days due to the G20 summit. It's been a nightmare moving around. I'm not sure if you've been involved directly or indirectly with the summit, but maybe tell us a little bit of what life in Johannesburg has been like in the midst of the summit.
Yes, absolutely. I've been staying at home to avoid it. I've just heard sirens, helicopters, airplanes. There's a great sense of excitement in the air over the summit. And I think a sense of relief that the summit seems to have gone very well and that there were positive outcomes despite some of the sort of tensions over the US joining or not joining.
Yeah, the President Trump making a decision not to attend the summit and then at the last minute trying to send a delegation. I think our South African government have played it very, very well in terms of the way they've handled the whole situation. But obviously the summit bringing so many world leaders in, and with them press and a whole lot of delegates. I know we had a little part of the summit down here in Durban, in that some part of it was held here, and that brought in people to the hotels, to fill the hotels and give a little bit of life to sleepy little Durban. But your take on the summit itself, the economic benefits, if you can give us your thought process.
Yes, I think, this was an interesting summit because, as we're aware, it was the first one that took place in an African country. And I think with South Africa planning the agenda, a lot of the themes and the topics that came to the fore were those that were important to the country and the continent. So if you look at the leaders' declaration that came out, a lot of the aspects that they looked at were things like inequality, which is something that's top of the mind for countries like South Africa, Brazil, India, but also in a lot of developed countries, as you have sort of the sort of class of the wealthy getting sort of more and more concentrated. You have issues about climate and disaster funding, disaster resilience. So I think this G20 focused a lot more on issues that are of relevance to the continent, and this was something that was very positive. I think there's been a lot of work being done here. There was a lot of exchange of ideas, a lot of conferences, as you mentioned. So I think, there was sort of a stimulus, not just in terms of the tourism sector and the hotel sector, but just a bit invigorating from the amount of exchange of ideas that has occurred.
Often it is said that these type of summits end up being talk shops and place for the world meetings to get together and shake hands, and good for the press and for public consumption. But nothing constructive kind of flows from there. Are we going to see some real benefits coming out of this?
It's not clear that you can sort of see any direct benefits necessarily, but I think by putting some of these agenda items higher on the agenda of the G7 countries, for example, so issues related to climate and inequality is something that may have benefits further on. But I think what was important in this one, in light of some of the sort of polarization that's occurring geopolitically, was the fact that in many ways this G20 created a sort of a group multilateralism and a refocus on countries moving together towards the common good, which is something that's been a bit lacking in international politics and geopolitics in the past sort of few years, thanks to, I think, America and some of the polarization that's occurring, not just in America, but in other countries as well. So I think overall, economically, many countries are sort of going quite internal, sort of putting up tariffs, putting up barriers, becoming more nationalistic. And I think the benefit of some of these types of summits is just getting global leaders to refocus on multilateralism, which in this instance, I think was easier in the absence of the US.
Yeah, one of the positives that came out of this, I was reading, is that China, for example, has dropped a lot of tariffs on South African goods flowing into China. So it hasn't worked the other way, in that, me myself as an importer of merchandise out of China, I would have hoped for some of those duties to have dropped. But certainly goods going into China, the duties and some of the tariffs have dropped. And we know we've been hurt the last few months because of the American tariffs that have been implemented on some of our goods, particularly in the agricultural space. Do you see any benefits, or do you see a change in stance coming from America in terms of being accommodating? I know there's a consensus that we've been punished for our stance on Palestine as well, based on the tariffs that have been implemented on us. But the tariffs, Trump in his wisdom decided to implement on the whole world, or most of the world. Your take on the American tariffs, and how badly is our economy going to be affected by it?
I think, America is quite a big trading partner, and I think it will have some impact. But my understanding is that there are also other markets. So, for example, I think a lot of our trade in agriculture and that is quite European focused, and America was a smaller market. So I think it will have an impact, but less of an impact. The problem arises if every country sort of starts a tit for tat and overall in the world tariffs go up. But I mean, it will have some damage. At the same time, I think with America, there's a level of uncertainty. There's a lot of tariffs that go up and come down and go up and come down. So I think to sort of just stay the course and continue to build up trade relationships, to build up export markets in other areas, China, India, and Europe, which are already one of our bigger markets.
They do say necessity is the mother of invention. So, when our back is against the wall and we're looking for other markets, maybe we need to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of reaching out there.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, Shaista, some parting comments from you on the economy in general. We do hear that things are very tough out there. It's a general thought and sentiment. We see some of the results coming out from the big companies. Trading patterns are not looking good. Some of the big retailers have been, their share prices have been extremely badly hammered based on their trading statements. One of the major themes that came out of these trading statements is that the economy is being heavily penalized or punished by the fact that so much of money is spent on gambling. Online gambling has become a real reality. There's a lot of money flowing into that, and that money could well have been spent in other more productive parts of the economy. Your thoughts on that?
This isn't something that I've really thought a lot about. I did see some of those comments related to online gambling, and I think overall these type of digital platforms and addictions are creating a bit of a regulatory loophole that our regulators are still trying to catch up with. So I think trying to more heavily regulate some of this online gambling is going to assist. But I was surprised to read some of those comments coming out on the actual impact it's having on retail on the whole. I hadn't realized it was such a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, myself, I looked at random on a couple of bank statements during the course of the last few weeks. These were prospective tenants, etc., that were looking to hire apartments that I had for rental, and I was actually gobsmacked when I went through some of these bank statements, and almost every one of them had an element of money being spent on gambling on a weekly basis. So, a 200 Rand year and a 300 Rand year and a 500 Rand year. But when one adds all of that up, and these are ordinary people in the street that are not high earners, it tells you that there's a fair percentage of the monthly salary being spent on gambling.
Yeah, it does suggest that. And I think the problem is gambling previously, it had a lot of barriers. You had to get out of your house, go to a place, and sort of be physically there. But right now it's being brought into people's bedrooms, on their cell phones. And I think that's the problem, just the accessibility of it is becoming more dangerous.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. In the past, you had to get into your car, you had to go to a place of gambling. There was a stigma attached to that, being seen there and things like that. But now it's all in the palm of your hands.
Yeah, and if you look at the big advertisers now that alcohol is no longer allowed to advertise, things like sports and that, you see the gambling companies coming up quite strongly in a lot of these sponsorships and a lot of the advertising.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're watching sports on TV, for example, in between every sports program is adverts, and I'm saying a large percentage of that those adverts now are from gambling companies. So yeah, it's in our face, and it's kind of portrayed as being very glamorous and it will enrich you and things, but no gambler talks about his losses. They all talk about the winnings only. I think that's quite typical. But anyhow, we talked about the bill earlier on that's up for comment. Your parting comments on the bill, and what would you advise people to kind of say and comment on, particularly in respect of the bill?
I think the thing to highlight for me about the bill is that it has the potential to do great good. If it can create more efficient licensing systems, that would be beneficial for businessmen at large. But at the same time, just to sort of highlight that it can't create barriers to businesses, that there has to be levels of efficiency, sufficient support, and backups in instances where systems aren't working. I think also just to highlight the sort of components around criminalizing the poorer traders, the informal traders. And I think as a sort of community organizations, that's something that should be of concern to us, in sort of making sure that this doesn't create a place for rent seeking of vulnerable and poor traders. So those are sort of some of the key areas.
Shaista, lovely speaking to you. It's not every day that you get to speak to an economist, and more than that, an economist that's got Rhodes University, Oxford University on her CV. So, yeah, we'd love to pick your brains again on the economy and where we're all heading as South Africans. The one question that economists don't like being asked is, where do you see the rand in 12 months' time? But maybe you can your comment on that.
Yeah, no, that's one that, my husband always told me he thought if he married an economist, that would mean he knows what shares to buy and when to buy gold and what the rand was doing. And that's the one thing I've been perfectly useless at predicting. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for joining us once again. Thanks for giving us your insight. And inshallah, we'll speak to you again sometime in the future on a different topic, or give us more enlightenment on this bill when it is closer to being implemented. And inshallah, we'll get you back on air. So jazakallah for that, and wassalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah for having me. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, we've been chatting to SHA'ISTA GOGA. She's an economist based in Johannesburg, having spent 2 years at Oxford University. So wow to that, and well done to her. And it's another program done for me. Inshallah, I'll meet you again next week on another Business Matters program. And in the meantime, please do comment on the legislation that SHA'ISTA was discussing with us and get your comments in. I think you have up till the 28th to do that. And with that is wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Religion survives and thrives because of business. Business has to encompass not just financial commodity and service transactions. It has also to include welfare, justice, empowerment, environmental and other issues too. Every week, Business Matters will delve into aspects of business that impact our lives. We will seek out extraordinary and ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. Facilitators, educators, and entrepreneurs will be invited to inspire and enlighten our listeners. Join Anwar Moolla for an interactive show and find out what really matters in business.
Teaching you something new every day. Radio Ansaar.
Color your world with Color Trade Paints. Color Trade Paints, stockers of interior and exterior coatings. We got you covered with our wide range of roof colors and are stockers of industrial floor coatings. A Color Trade innovation, the 4-in-1 primer must always be your first choice. Magic Cover PVA, 99 Rand per 5 liters. Peach, cream or white. Restore your driveway with high durability jet black tar coat, 690 Rands per 20 liters. Get to a Color Trade Paint store near you or visit our e-store. Call 086-126-8888 for free delivery. Make the right paint choice. Always ensure color before trade. Buy Color Trade Paints.
Get ready to elevate your fitness game at First Fitness in Durban's Berea. With a spacious free weight area, award-winning equipment, and exclusive ladies-only parking and training level, we've got everything you need to crush your goals. Hit the ground running on our outdoor track or unleash your inner warrior in our MMA and boxing dungeon. Plus, enjoy high security and ample parking. And don't forget to refuel at our halal coffee and health restaurant for the best in coffees, smoothies, and healthy eats. Join us today and redefine your fitness journey. First Fitness, dare to be extraordinary.
For too many communities across Africa and the world, access to clean water remains a dream. At Africa Muslims Agency, we dig deep, reaching into the heart of the earth to fill the cups of those in need. Sponsor a water well for 16,500 Rand, or a borehole in Afghanistan for 55,000 Rand, or Africa for 65,000 Rand, or any amount. With water comes food, health, education, and growth. An ongoing reward with Africa Muslims Agency.
Radio Ansaar, 24/7, 365.
ज़िक्र है उसका बसती सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ذکر ہے اس کا بستی بستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم گونج رہی ہے محفل ہستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم گونج رہی ہے محفل ہستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم ذکر ہے اس کا بستی بستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم اس کے عمل نے شرک مٹایا ایک خدا کا رنگ جمایا اس کے عمل نے شرک مٹایا ایک خدا کا رنگ جمایا ختم ہوئی اصنام پرستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم ختم ہوئی اصنام پرستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم گونج رہی ہے محفل ہستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کیا کہنا معراج کی شب کا دیکھ کے رتبہ شاہ عرب کا کیا کہنا معراج کی شب کا دیکھ کے رتبہ شاہ عرب کا چرخ نے بھی محسوس کی بستی چرخ نے بھی محسوس کی بستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم چرخ نے بھی محسوس کی بستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم گونج رہی ہے محفل ہستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم بے شک اس کی شان ہے اونچی پیار سے حق نے جس کو عطا کی بے شک اس کی شان ہے اونچی پیار سے حق نے جس کو عطا کی کل نبیوں پر بالا دستی کل نبیوں پر بالا دستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کل نبیوں پر بالا دستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم گونج رہی ہے محفل ہستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم دے کر دنیا بھر کی دولت مل جائے گر اس کی محبت دے کر دنیا بھر کی دولت مل جائے گر اس کی محبت پھر بھی یہ نعمت ہے سستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم پھر بھی یہ نعمت ہے سستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم گونج رہی ہے محفل ہستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم عشق نبی میں اہل وفا نے لوٹے کیسے کیسے خزانے عشق نبی میں اہل وفا نے لوٹے کیسے کیسے خزانے کیف سرور و جود و مستی کیف سرور و جود و مستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کیف سرور و جود و مستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم گونج رہی ہے محفل ہستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم اس کا جلوہ دیکھ جو پاتا قلب حزی پھولا نہ سماتا اس کا جلوہ دیکھ جو پاتا قلب حزی پھولا نہ سماتا چشم عقیدت یوں نہ ترستی چشم عقیدت یوں نہ ترستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم چشم عقیدت یوں نہ ترستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم گونج رہی ہے محفل ہستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نفیس ہے عاجز اس کی ثنا سے کاش قوانی کام کے ہوتے نفیس ہے عاجز اس کی ثنا سے کاش قوانی کام کے ہوتے نعت کی بدلی کھل کے برستی نعت کی بدلی کھل کے برستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نعت کی بدلی کھل کے برستی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم ذکر ہے اس کا بستی بستی ذکر ہے.
This Azan is sponsored for the Isale Sawab of Marhum Muhammad Farooq Lateeb and all Marhumeen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them the highest abode in Jannah. Ameen.
أعزائي المستمعين، حان الآن موعد أذان العشاء لمدينة دربن وما حولها.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته وارزقنا شفاعته يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
This dua brought to you by Simplex Radio, South Africa's leading retailer of appliances, car sound and home theater systems.
Having a clean, comfortable home is every homeowner's pride. That's why Khan's Chemicals have developed and manufactured prime yet affordable quality household brands. Starlight, Miracle Mum, Exterminate, and Angie to care for your home and family. With a wide range of fabric softeners, dishwashing liquids, bleachers, and all-purpose cleaners, pine gels, double baths, and much more. Khan's Chemicals ensures your home remains our number one priority. For sales and other inquiries, call 011 933 4021. Khan's Chemicals, cleaning your home the way you want.
This Q&A program is brought to you by the Capital Group of Companies, Capital Air, Capital Decor, and Gate Equip for the benefit. This Q&A program is brought to you by the Capital Group of Companies. For the benefits of the Ummah.
This hadith is sponsored by Ashraful Aid, International Humanitarian Organization.
حديث عليه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم القرآن حجة لك أو عليك. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said the Quran will either be a proof for you or against you. If you acted according to its teachings and followed it, it will be a proof for you. If you acted contrary to the teachings of the Quran, it will be a proof against you.
This hadith is sponsored by Ashraful Aid, International Humanitarian Organization.
Are you looking for a meaningful way to fulfill your zakat obligation? Look no further than Ashraful Aid. With our trusted track record, your zakat reaches those who need it the most, in the most honorable and dignified manner. Visit our website at www.ashrafulaid.org.
Sunnah a Day, proudly brought to you by Sunpick, 100% pure sunflower cooking oil. Sunpick, cook more with
Sunnah Adi. It is sunnah to always have vinegar and honey in one's home.
Sunnah a Day, proudly brought to you by Sunpick, 100% pure sunflower cooking oil. Sunpick, cook more with less.
Imagine this. You're putting together a 7-color meal, from the creamy pasta to the glazed carrots and flavorful onion gravy. This entire meal is made with our 100% pure extra virgin olive oil from our La Familia range, bringing outstanding quality and taste to your kitchen. Shop La Familia 100% pure extra virgin olive oil at any leading supermarkets near you. La Familia, heart of the home.
This Q&A program is brought to you by the Capital Group of Companies. Capital Decor. Off this Q&A program. Companies, benefit the
An informative Islamic global perspective.
24th of November. The news from Durban 90.4 FM to United States, 25.6 FM. From what time to Ghana residents as flood hit KwaZulu-Natal. American money now. KwaZulu-Natal Premier Tammy Ntule's residents to remain alert. The weather warning alerts continue to be in place for most parts of the province today. Ntule has been reacting to the heavy rainfall that triggered floods in the Nshwathi local municipality yesterday, leaving a trail of destruction in the new Hanover area. Search and rescue teams recovered the body of a middle-aged woman who had been trapped in a river area. They also intensified searches for two other people who were swept away by raging waters. Speaking during a Durban press briefing today, the Premier Ntule stated that 3 flood victims were living in one of the affected areas of homes. World Team councils for legal income says some residents and local businesses have also begun a donation drive to aid the affected families. He says many families have been left destitute, with some with only clothes on their backs. Meanwhile, Eskom's KwaZulu-Natal electricians are busy with restoration efforts following widespread power supply interruption from yesterday's storm. One 2 suspects wanted for murder and kidnapping appears at the Verle Magistrate Court today. The duo were arrested last Friday for allegedly kidnapping in the Cotton area. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Tendiswa Moolla said the 25-year-old was reported missing in September. Preliminary investigations revealed that the deceased owed the suspect's money. He was allegedly tied and beaten up by the suspect. When they realized he had succumbed to his injuries, they disposed of his body in a nearby pit lavatory. Police say the suspect were then arrested and taken to Tongat police station for processing. The police say the remains of Spenati Mantina were recovered. In other news, Parliament the committee investigating KwaZulu-Natal Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's allegations will take a new twist on Wednesday. The committee will move its questioning to the Kosi Mampuru prison in Pretoria, where Vusimuzi Kat Matlala will be its subject of inquiry. Matlala, believed to be connected to fraudulent transactions in the Tembisa hospital, was arrested in April for allegedly orchestrating the 2023 attempted murder of his ex-girlfriend, Taboko Tubajani, and is currently in custody after being denied bail. Andy Mashele is the security strategist. He is wading in on Matlala due to be questioned by the other committee.
The recordings that suggested Mr. Matlala and the relationships that he has with Brown Moholt, with General Sibia, and by extension, the suspended Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, and him having made damning allegations about funding to the value of 500,000, including but not limited to the people who attended the January 8th statement that he had to look after on behalf of the minister. I think key and crucial would be to explain how he made the payments, to explain the reasoning behind the minister requesting him to fund his campaign to become the president of the day. He will also be expected to explain, amongst others that we had from Mr. Mohoti, the John Wick story. Is he John Wick or is he not John Wick?
An international story, a former chief commander of the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps, IRGC, has warned that Israel's regime's targeted killings of resistance commanders are accelerating its own demise. Moshe Rezai made the remarks during a funeral ceremony held in honor of unidentified martyrs in the southern eastern city of Kerman today. He says the regime imagines it can advance its own agenda through assassinations and also believing that striking Lebanese and Iranian commanders would fall forced the two nations into submission. Whereas I, currently a member of the Islamic Republic's Expediency Council, underlined that resistance leaders do not represent governments or states, adding that these commanders belong to the nations, to the oppressed people. Whereas I says the martyrdom therefore cannot be meaningless for the people. Your financial indicators ran to the dollar 17 rands 29, the euro 19 rands 95 cents, and the British pound is 22 rands 68 cents. Your weather 24 degrees. Quick reminder of our top story. KwaZulu-Natal Premier Tamin Tuli is urging residents to remain alert as weather warning alerts continue to be in place for most parts of KwaZulu-Natal today. This follows flooding in the new Anwar area.
Radio Ansaar, keeping you in the loop. This Q&A program is brought to you by the Capital Group of Companies, Capital Air, Capital Decor, and Gate Equip for the benefit of
The opportunity to sponsor a share in the war in South Africa for just 1,000 rand and provide what the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, calls the best form of charity. Donate online at alimsa.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
At the new Checkers Saxony Westwood, you'll find everything from our signature steakhouse classic cuts, expertly aged and ready for the braai. Try something exclusive like our Simple Truth certified lamb, responsibly sourced, free range, and raised without added growth hormones or promoters. Checkers Saxony Westwood, Victory, Bakery, and Deli, certified by the NIHT. Doors open on October 30th. See you there.
Gift of the Needy team is working hands-on in Gaza to distribute aid in this time of crisis. To your second now to our brothers and sisters in Palestine who are in dire need. Standard Bank, Gift of the Needy account 2723276654. Donate online on www.giftoftheneedy.com. Call us on 031 2713 Gift of the Needy, bringing ease to those in need. This Q&A program is brought to you by the Capital Group of Companies, Capital Air, Capital Decor, and Gate Equip for the benefits of the Ummah. This Q&A program is brought to you by the Capital Group of Companies, Capital Air, Capital Decor, and Gate Equip for the benefit of the Ummah.
Tunut Nazilaj proudly brought to you by Nona's Italian Kitchen, Strata Street Food, and the Magnum Capino Treat Store. Oh Allah, guide me and grant me well-being with those whom you have granted well-being.